The morning they found Elijah Ford's body slumped behind the altar, the air inside St. Briar's felt thick with guilt, so heavy even the sun hesitated to rise. The stone church stood silent, its stained glass fractured by time, the Virgin's face cracked down the middle. Word spread faster than the sirens could pierce the dawn. Elijah's dead. And not just dead. Murdered, some whispered. But by the time the coroner took him away, the town's grief was already being rewritten. No candles. No vigil. No burial. The church, under Reverend Halcom's hand, refused even to say his name from the pulpit. And the people, trembling behind hymnals and locked doors, accepted the silence as holy. I remember the first time I saw Elijah. He was 13, fresh from foster care, with bruises on his back and fire in his eyes. A boy made of defiance and dignity, who never begged, not even when the pews whispered about the sins that followed him like a shadow. They said he stole, lied, provoked good people. But I knew the truth. I saw how he fixed the broken door to the food pantry when no one asked him to. I watched him give away his coat to a girl crying in the snow. That's what made him dangerous. Elijah didn't kneel to shame, and in this town, that was the worst sin of all. Reverend Halcom preached about redemption, but never for Elijah. Not when the boy confessed he saw something in the bell tower the night Deacon Matthews disappeared. Not when he claimed he had proof. And not when he came into the chapel one evening, soaked in rain and shaking, holding a manila envelope like it weighed more than God. He never got to open it. By morning, he was gone. They said Elijah slipped. Said maybe it was drugs, or his mind. Said a lot of things. But the bruising on his throat said otherwise. The envelope vanished. The Reverend's sermons turned urgent, fire and brimstone at the pulpit, like he was trying to bury something with noise. And I, Mara Connolly, knew I couldn't stay silent. I'd loved Elijah like a brother. Maybe more. And I couldn't sit through another Sunday while the town damned a dead boy for being inconvenient. So I went digging. I started with the church's basement, locked for years, ever since Deacon Matthews went missing. I picked the lock with a hairpin, hands trembling as I descended. Dust coated everything, but beneath it were boxes marked with names. Names of children. Foster children. Elijah's name was there. So was mine. And dozens more. Files. Photos. Letters. I found one from Deacon Matthews to the Reverend, dated 2 weeks before he vanished. If you don't come clean, I will. My breath hitched. The letter was torn at the corner, like someone had tried to destroy it and failed. I took it, heart pounding, and as I turned to leave, I heard a noise behind me. Halcom. He stood at the top of the stairs, framed by candlelight, hands clasped like a serpent in prayer. Some doors aren't meant to be opened, Mara. I should have run. But I stood there, frozen in a quiet defiance Elijah would have admired. Why didn't you bury him? Halcom's face twisted. Because he wasn't one of us. That's not a reason. It is when you know what he was about to do. That boy, he would have ruined everything. And there it was. Confession, not whispered behind glass, but spoken like truth didn't matter anymore. You killed him.
No.
But I let it happen. And I'd do it again. I left. Took the letter, took Elijah's truth, and mailed copies to every reporter from here to New York. Then I waited. I didn't sleep, didn't eat. And when the reporters came, when the police returned with warrants and cameras, I stood on the church steps and watched justice unfold. Not loud, not fast, but inevitable. They exhumed Deacon Matthews 3 days later, buried beneath the rose garden, bones wrapped in the church's linens. Poison in his system. Murder ruled. Halcom was taken in chains. And the town, shamed into mourning, finally lit a candle for Elijah. But that's not the end. That night, I found another envelope tucked beneath my doorstep. No name. Inside was a photo. Elijah, standing in front of the bell tower, holding a key. On the back, in his handwriting. If anything happens to me, don't trust the church, but don't trust the law either. What they're hiding didn't start with Matthews. It started long before him. Dig deeper. Start with Father Kincaid. Father Kincaid had died 27 years ago. Officially. I turned the photo over again. In the background, almost too faint to see, was a figure in the window. Watching. The morning after I received the photograph, I drove out to the old church records hall, a crumbling annex behind St. Briar's, swallowed by ivy and time. They said it had been closed since the 90s, but I had Elijah's key. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not even Detective Harris, the only cop in town who hadn't looked at Elijah like he was disposable. I didn't trust him. Not after what Elijah had written. Don't trust the law either. The lock gave with a soft click. Inside, it smelled of mildew and dust, and something else, like iron and rot. I covered my nose and stepped over broken floorboards and scattered hymnals. The files were buried in filing cabinets rusted shut, but one drawer was already open. Not just open, rifled through. I knew immediately I wasn't the first to come here. Someone else had been looking for something. Or hiding it. I found the name, Father Everett Kincaid, buried in a folder labeled Clergy Transfers. The date of death listed was 1998. Cause: suicide by drowning. But the body was never recovered. There was a note, though. Photocopied. Faded. May God forgive what I could no longer silence. There was something strange beneath the printed text, a smear, like ink had been covered with whiteout. I scraped at it with my fingernail until the edge of another line appeared beneath. And may they never find what lies beneath the crypt. I froze. The church had a crypt, sealed for decades. Reverend Halcombe always said it was unstable, unsafe, off-limits. But now I knew better. Elijah must have figured it out too. That's what he was trying to show. That's why they silenced him. I left the file hall and drove straight to the church. It was still police-taped, but the reporters were gone. The cameras, the questions, all gone now that Halcombe was behind bars. But they thought it was over. Thought the town's rot ended with him. I walked past the altar where Elijah was found. Past the pew where I'd sat as a girl, naive and devout. And down the stone steps to the crypt. The gate was locked with heavy chains. I used Elijah's key again, same symbol etched on its side as the broken cross above the altar. A serpent twisted around a sword. Inside, it was colder than it should have been. The walls were lined with crumbling coffins, old saints buried beneath forgotten prayers. But it wasn't the dead that made me stop. It was the door. Metal, reinforced, marked with a strange sigil I'd never seen before. The same one carved into Elijah's photo, barely visible in the bell tower glass. It wasn't part of any church doctrine I knew. I touched the handle. It was warm, and behind it I heard breathing. Not echoes. Not the creaks of wood or whispers of memory. Breathing. I stumbled back. My heart kicked hard against my ribs as something thudded softly against the door from the other side. A dragging sound, then stillness, and a voice, so faint I almost thought it was in my mind. Mara. I ran. I ran until my legs gave out behind the church, where the rose garden had been torn up for Deacon Matthew's body. The dirt was still fresh, but something glinted just beside the grave, an old medallion, half buried. I picked it up. It was etched with the same sigil. On the back, a year, 1949. I didn't sleep that night. I read every archived article about St. Briar's I could find. Most were praise, charity, miracles. But in the deep folds of digital silence, I found a pattern. Every 20 years, a body went missing. A priest transferred. A boy vanished. Always the same month. Always no burial. And in 1949, Father Kincaid's arrival, 4 orphans from the church's home disappeared. Declared runaways. Never found. The next morning, I visited Halcombe in county lockup. He didn't look surprised to see me. You opened it, he said. Not all the way. His lips twitched into a dry smile. Then you're still alive. For now. What's in the crypt? He leaned forward. The church never buried Elijah because he was born to uncover what was never meant to rise again. That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get. I stood. I'm going back in there. His eyes sharpened, like he wanted to warn me but couldn't. Then write down your name, girl. Because after this, no one else will remember it. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Check the baptism records. What? Elijah Ford was never baptized in this parish. But he was in the others. Others? There were 5, until only St. Briar's remained. They all had crypts too. I didn't ask what happened to the other 4 churches. I already knew. They'd burned. That night, I returned to the crypt, armed with a flashlight, a crowbar, and the medallion. The key fit the metal door. As it groaned open, the air changed. Heavy.
Sweet. Foul.
And what I saw inside.
No.
I don't even have the words. But carved into the far wall, behind chains and bones and something still moving, was a name. Elijah Ford.
Fresh.
Scratched in blood. And beneath it, one word. Resurrected. I stumbled backward from the wall. My breath caught somewhere between a scream and a prayer. The name, Elijah Ford, wasn't just carved. It was fresh, wet, bleeding. And the word beneath it, resurrected, seemed to hum against the crypt walls like it had a pulse of its own. I blinked, half expecting the illusion to fade, but it didn't. The blood didn't dry. The air didn't move. And the shape in the corner, the one shackled behind the rusted iron bars, didn't stop breathing. I forced myself to move forward, slowly, step by step, until the flashlight beam steadied. What I saw didn't make sense. The figure was slumped, draped in torn cloth like burial linens. A chain ran from its ankle into the floor, and its skin, if you could call it that, was cracked like scorched earth, stitched with runes. Its face was turned away from me, but the moment my light hit its eyes, they snapped open. And I fell. They weren't Elijah's eyes, but they used to be. The thing, whatever it was, cocked its head, and I swear, something in its expression flickered recognition.
Pain. Guilt.
Mara, it croaked. Same voice as the one that whispered to me the night before. Only now it wasn't faint. It filled the crypt with a sound of rusted sorrow. I wanted to run. Every part of my body screamed too. But I stepped closer. Elijah? I asked, trembling. I tried to stop them, he whispered. But they used me. Used you how? His eyes welled with something darker than tears. The church. Halcombe. Kincaid. They weren't protecting souls. They were feeding something. In the crypt. In me. I was born for this. Bred for this. He raised his hands, and I saw the brands, circular scars burned into both palms, identical to the sigil on the medallion. I thought I was the witness, he said. But I was the offering. I clutched the medallion in my hand, and something in the air shifted. The creature, Elijah, let out a low moan and reeled back, his body arching as if the metal burned him from a distance. Where did you get that? He hissed. It was in the garden, next to where they buried Matthews. That medallion opens more than doors, he rasped. It seals them. You have to burn it. Burn it? Why? Because it's what binds me here. And if they come back for me, if they finish what they started, whatever is left of me will not be me. And it will not stop. I stared at the medallion, then at Elijah, if that's even who he still was. Behind me, the crypt door slammed shut. I turned, flashlight flickering. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell above. Not fast. Not urgent. Measured. One by one. And then I heard the voice.
Come.
Familiar. I warned you, Mara. Detective Harris. I told you to leave this buried. You didn't listen. He stepped into the light, gun drawn, badge glinting beneath his coat. But it wasn't a badge I recognized. Not state. Not local. I looked at him, suddenly seeing everything Elijah had tried to tell me. Don't trust the church. Don't trust the law. Because they were one and the same. Harris walked closer, ignoring the stench, ignoring the thing that used to be Elijah, still moaning behind bars. You're holding a key to something ancient, he said. Something sacred. And we can't let you destroy it. You mean him, I said, nodding toward Elijah. No, Harris said. I mean you. He raised the gun. And that's when Elijah screamed. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was ancient and shattered, and full of every child who was ever buried beneath a church that promised to save them. The chain snapped, the medallion glowed, and the lights blew out. Darkness swallowed the crypt. And above us, in the sanctuary, the bells of St. Briar's began to ring. 12 times. At midnight. Just like they had the night Elijah died. And now, the dead were ringing back. The sound of the bells echoed through the bones of the church like a scream pulled from the throat of the earth. 12 rings. Midnight. And in the darkness of the crypt, something broke. Not just the chains. Not just the quiet. But the line between what was and what should never have been. I couldn't see. The flashlight had shattered when it hit the stone floor. All I had was the burning heat of the medallion in my palm. Elijah, or the thing he had become, was somewhere in front of me, panting like a wounded animal, and behind me, Harris's footsteps crept closer, slow and deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. "Mara," he called, voice low, coaxing, like a priest at confession. "You think this is about one boy? You think it ends in this church?" Elijah was the 13th offering. There are dozens of churches like this. Dozens of crypts. His voice was everywhere. Around me. Inside me. He was supposed to hold the hunger, not become it. And then I understood. The church hadn't created Elijah's curse. They'd harnessed it. Passed it down like scripture. Raised boys in secrecy, baptized them not into God, but into something beneath God. Groomed them as vessels. Filled them with ancient blood until they were strong enough to carry the thing they were meant to hold. Until the seal cracked. Until it got out. "Elijah," I whispered into the dark. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. I turned, groping blindly for the wall, until my fingers brushed bone. And then breath.
Cold.
Too cold. Mara, his voice again.
Close now. Desperate. Human.
I reached out, my hand trembling, and felt his fingers wrap around mine. "I can't hold it back," he whispered. "Not anymore. Burn it. You have to burn it." Behind me, the click of a safety being released. "Don't," Harris warned. "Don't listen to him. That medallion doesn't kill what's inside him. It releases it. You burn that seal, and the thing buried in Elijah won't die, it'll spread." "Elijah?" I asked, still not letting go. His grip tightened. "I'd rather die than be their cage." That was the last thing he said before Harris fired. The bullet never hit me. Because Elijah moved. In one impossible burst of speed, he slammed into Harris, dragging him down into the pit at the far end of the crypt, the one I hadn't seen before, the one that breathed. They both vanished into black. And then, silence. Real silence. The kind that feels like the end of something. I stumbled forward, the medallion still searing hot in my hand, and reached the edge of the pit. There was no bottom. Just smoke. Just whispers. And one last word from below.
Now.
I threw the medallion in. The light it cast was unnatural. White and red and blue, flickering like a fire too angry to die. It hit the pit like a star exploding underwater. The ground shook. Stone cracked. The sigil carved in the wall behind me burned away. And St. Briar's began to collapse. I ran. I barely made it out of the crypt before the altar above buckled, folding in on itself like paper. The tower groaned. The bells cracked. And then, silence again. Only this time, the good kind. The kind that means it's over. I sat on the lawn outside as the sun rose behind the blackened cross of St. Briar's and watched the church die for real this time. They never found Harris's body. Or Elijah's. Or the pit. The official story said the crypt caved in after a gas leak ignited. They blamed the explosion on poor records and old stone. But the bells, they rang one more time that morning at dawn. Just once. Like a thank you. Or a goodbye. It took months to piece together what the church had really been doing. The records. The missing boys. The sealed parishes across the country. But the names were there, burned into hidden ledgers, baptized in silence. The Vatican denied it all, called it localized corruption. But I know better. Because it wasn't just St. Briar's. It was a network. And Elijah wasn't the last.
He was just the first to fight back.
And now they know I know. Because last week I got a letter. No return address. Inside, a photograph. A church I've never seen before. Its bell tower broken. And a name written on the back.